So welcome practical team sports students. Today we're going to be working on your assignment, focusing on different types of skills for your assignment. So remember, you have a theory part of your assignment as well as a practical part. Or what we're going to do today is you're just going to look at the different types of skills which should help you with your theory part of your assignment, the written part. So when you log into Teams and you look at your assignment brief, it will say things like students will need to know a wide range of skills, techniques and tactics used in a different number of team sports. They all need to be able to explain how to execute them, when and when not to use them, and the positive and negatives from that. Today we're going to particularly have a focus on, what is a skill and the different types of skills. But on your assignment brief it says, describe the skills, techniques needed in two team sports to support your demonstration. So what is a skill? Skills are learned abilities that athletes acquire through training and practice. Skill may be defined as the ability to perform at a high standard effectively and efficiently. This might differ from technique. So what is a technique? Techniques are the basic movements of any sport or event. For example, a block start in the 100-meter race is a technique. We combine several techniques into a pattern of movement, e.g. a triple jump, running and then a hop, a step and the jump phases. There is a vast difference between the two. Skills are traditionally performed in a game setting, whereas techniques are performed in training. You need to use these definitions to answer what are the skills and techniques needed in football or basketball, if you chose those, badminton and volleyball, or hockey and rugby. Skilled performance characteristics. So what are the characteristics of a skilled performance? Firstly, effectiveness. Are the skills being performed accurate? E.g., the shot to where you want it to go. Is there consistency? E.g., you can repeat the shot over and over again. Is it controlled? E.g., the performer is in full control of the skill. And is it confident? Okay, do they have belief in that ability? So when we're looking at whether or not you can perform a skill well, we're looking at accuracy, consistency, control and confidence. Can you display that when you are performing those desired skills? Another characteristic is efficiency. So we're looking at technique, e.g. good technique. Does it look effortless? Is it fluent? Are the actions smooth and controlled? And is it aesthetic? E.g., the performer looks pleasing to the eye. If you think back to maybe an athlete called Paula Radcliffe, she runs with a very different running style. She's not athletic, she's not aesthetic, but she is fluent in her movement and she does have good technique. Responsive. So this is the decision-making aspect. E.g., can the performer make the correct decisions in the right situations? Are they adaptive? So can the performer change the performance depending on the situation? So moving from defensive to offensive, okay, or changing the technique in regards to, for example, if you are boxing, trying to stay inside the mat. The classification of movement skills is on a continuum. So skills aren't an easy way to be identified. Okay, they are therefore placed on a continuum. So a continuum is a range or a sliding scale between two extremes. Each point on a continuum is slightly greater or lesser than its neighbours. You can move it up and down. So for example, in physical education, pupils take part in games on a continuum based on their age. So age 5 in my sport, rugby, they would be playing multi-skill games, so ball skills. So it wouldn't really look like rugby, it would look a little bit like football, netball, rugby kind of put together, and they're just learning to throw and catch and move direction. When they get to 7, 8 years old, they start, following more of the rules of the game of rugby, but it's modified rugby, such as tag rugby. And when they get to 16, so kind of your age group or a little bit younger, they then start doing full contact sports, full contact 15-a-side rugby. Sports skills are arranged on a continuum. Okay, these are environmental continuums, complexity continuums, and pacing continuums, and I'm going to go into detail about that in the next couple of slides. So an environmental continuum in sport. Examples of environmental stimuli are other people. So for example, a netballer is reacting to their own and their other team's players. So they're trying to control their game, moving into the right position, but they're also paying attention to the opposition, covering them, and their teammates being in the right positions. The terrain or surface. So for example, a cross-country runner running on a muddy ground or a dry ground will be, they'll be responding to different stimulus. Weather, for example, a golfer playing in the wind or the rain is going to have a massive effect on how that ball is going to fly. And the situation, for example, the venue or the crowd. So when we think about situations now, thinking back to this COVID situation, a lot of football teams and rugby teams are playing in silent stadiums, and they're having to create their own crowd atmosphere by cheering a lot to sort of spur them on because they don't have that buzz from the crowd. Let's start looking at the different types of skills. So you've got open and you've got closed skills. So closed skills are skills that are not affected by the environment. They're usually self-paced, so driven by themselves, and occur in a fixed and a predictable situation. So an example of that might be just running on a treadmill. The performer uses exactly the same technique every time, and it is controlled and is in control of what happens. In a sporting situation, that might be a gymnast performing a floor routine. Okay, the weather's going to be the same because it's indoors. The floor is going to be the same. Their clothing is going to be the same. So it's a reasonably closed skill. When we compare that to an open skill, so open skills are affected by the environment. They're mainly perceptual and they're usually externally paced. So someone else is creating the outcome. So that could be playing tennis where that person serves. Okay, you are waiting to respond to that athlete. They occur when performers may have to make decisions and adapt their skills to the changing or unpredictable environment. The performer is not in control of what is happening. An example of this would be making a pass in ultimate frisbee, or like I said, playing outdoor tennis. It could be windy, raining, and you're having to wait for the opposition to provide you with a stimulus, which is the ball. Practices that support the development of closed and open skills. So we've got fixed practice. So when we think of fixed practice, we're going to think of drills, okay? And it involves repeating the practice and doing the same movement over and over and over again to refine a technique. These practices are best called closed skills. An example of this might be diving, practicing kick-ups, dribbling around cones. Varied practice involves repeating the skill in a variety of situations, which best suits the development of open skills. So, for example, catching the ball when playing against the opposition, such as in invasion games like rugby union or netball, or pursuing pressurising in different situations and oppositions on the court or on the field. So think of more mini games where you're waiting to sort of respond to the stimulus of other people around you in that group. Most skills are not totally closed or open, but again, fall in a continuum. They range between the two. So you're looking at more closed skills would be, a diver diving in competition. You're looking in the middle between closed and open, a wheelchair racer to be aware of the races and other lanes on a track. And then you've got something like basketball, where they're perceiving and responding to the ball, their teammates and the opposition all at once. So you can see closed, responding to one factor, middle of the range, two factors, and then open would be a multiple of factors that are occurring. Task 1. After looking at the slides, give 2 reasons why an indoor basketball free throw could be classed as a closed skill. So we're not talking about the game, we're talking about a free throw. Pause this YouTube video for a few minutes, and then when you're ready to answer it, you can move on. So the complexity continuum in sport. So we've got basic skills, simple skills, They form the foundation of more complex skills. They do not include complicated movements. Basic skills are often generic to many sports, so you can always teach the basic skills. Sports people need to master basic skills before they attempt the complex skills. Examples of basic skills are running, jumping, throwing, catching and striking. These are also known as fundamental sporting skills. On the other hand, complex skills are often much more difficult. They include complicated movements that require high levels of coordination and control. They are usually sport specific, and examples of complex skills are serving in tennis, throwing a discus in athletics, and performing a vault in gymnastics. So, when you're looking at complex skills, think of high skills involved in football, so such as a bicycle kick, around the world. Those are complex skills. Sports people also use mental skills when they perform. These include skills such as interpretation, making judgments, and decision making. Skills become more complex when they involve more interpretation, judgment, and decision making. For example, in cricket, a bowler has to judge when and how often to use a reserve swing bowling action, as well as be able to do it. So they have to judge when they're going to do it. Most skills are not totally basic or complex, but again, fall on a continuum somewhere between the two. So, for example, again, my sport is rugby, so these are very rugby specific, but we've got basic skills such as running with the ball in a straight line. More complex would be kicking a penalty or a conversion, and then a complex would be able to scrummage safely and effectively is a complex skill, requiring multiple judgments from the brain, from the body, and lots of different skill components as well. Task 2. Using a practical example, describe 2 characteristics of basic motor skills. Pause this. When you're ready, resume the video. Pacing continuum in sport. So skills range according to who controls the speed of the movement. So there are self-paced skills, internal. They are controlled by the performer. The performer decides on when to execute the skill, such as in athletics, when throwing a javelin, or gymnastics, when you start the vault. These skills tend to be more towards the closed end of the environmental continuum. A good example of this would be a 100-meter sprinter has total control over the rate at which they run and the timing of their own action, but they don't have control of when they're going to actually start the race. Externally paced skills. These are controlled by the environment. They include a decision and a reaction. In most cases, the opponent controls the rate of performance. So, for example, in football, the defender closes down the centre forward, and this causes a decision to be made of whether shooting or passing. These skills, therefore, tend to be towards the open end of the continuum. A goalkeeper in handball will jump high and left because they perceive that the ball has to be thrown in that direction and for no other reason. Therefore, the goalkeeper is responding to the environment rather than choosing for themselves how to perform the skill. So they are reacting to the stimulus, the ball coming towards them. They're not thinking, I'm going to jump this way and the ball might go that way. So we're looking at self-paced and we're looking at externally paced. So on that continuum, towards the self-paced would be a sprinter, sprinting out of the blocks. Obviously, they have to reply to the gun, that's the stimulus, but they're in control of the speed in which they're running, they're in control of the direction that they're running. But, more externally paced would be that goalkeeper, focusing on the flight of the ball and the response accordingly. So we've highlighted all the different aspects of skills so that you're aware of that when you're writing your theoretical part of your assignment. In next week's lecture, we're going to cover examples of how tactics can be used in your chosen sports. So we can be providing examples of offensive and attacking tactics, defensive tactics, set plays, team formations, movement, communication and phases of play. Guys, I hope you enjoyed that lecture. Any comments, please contact me through Teams.